At long last. Welcome to part 2 of my George Lopez Iceberg series. It's been a long time coming, but since this video is about double the length of the last one, I thought it'd be worth the wait. For this video, I'm going to continue my comprehensive analysis of layers 2 and 3. And in case you haven't checked my community tab announcements, I'm planning on making the third video in the series the last, so that should cover the end of the iceberg. Without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy. Layer 2. Randy McGee. Randy was Benny's ex-fiance, played by Nick Offerman. Randy is considerably younger than Benny. He was 42 years old when they started dating, as Benny is probably in her 60s. Randy works a forklift at the factory, and at one point was romantically involved with Accident Amy. Eventually, he and Benny get engaged, but that gets scrapped real quick, as he and Amy start fooling around again shortly thereafter. That essentially destroyed his and Benny's relationship. He appears throughout Season 3 and comes back for one episode in Season 4. Angie was George's first girlfriend. So George and Angie met in high school. Angie was a popular cheerleader, while George was looked down upon by the popular kids. When the time comes around for the Sadie Hawkins dance, the popular girls do a sort of competition to see who can bring the biggest loser to the dance. One of Angie's friends decides to ask out Ernie, and Angie asks out George, and the rest is history. Angie had dated other people prior to George, but Angie was George's first real girlfriend, as is made clear by several jokes in the show. Gina Sorenstam. Gina is an inspector at Powers Brothers alongside Benny. Appearing in 11 episodes, she appears in Seasons 2, 3, 5, and 6. Despite her age, Gina is sexual. She constantly sexually harasses George, even though he makes it clear her advances are not welcome. She's also apparently bisexual, but I'd say she's mostly just horny. Big head flashback sequences. Now here's a fun trademark of the show. Whenever there's a flashback segment in the show that goes back to George's childhood, they show little kids but with the adult actors' faces superimposed onto their heads. It works really well for comedic effect in my opinion, and it's pretty unique, I gotta say. Allendale. Allendale is the expensive private school that Carmen gets accepted to after the Lopezes decide to pull her from public school. Obviously, most of the students there come from wealthy families, so there's a disparity between Carmen and her friends usually because the Lopezes aren't rich like a lot of her friends' families are. Allendale is where Carmen eventually meets her boyfriend, Jason. Linda Lorenzo. Linda is actually George's sister. She's the daughter of Benny and Manny. Benny withheld this information from George until he was an adult. She is younger than George, and Benny put her up for adoption when she knew she couldn't raise 2 kids by herself. Benny says that she went to a good family, which resulted in Linda having a pretty cushy upbringing, as she had her own pony as a kid.
Wow, that's a nice one.
Oh, yes. I miss Cupcake so much. He was my childhood pony.
You had a pony?
By the time George finally meets her, he finds out that she is the superintendent of a school district, and that she also has dyslexia like George. So Linda appears in 3 episodes of the show, but she's played by 2 different actresses. In her first appearance in Season 3, she's played by Lisa Guerrero. In her next 2 appearances in the show, she's played by Ava LaRue. Zach Powers. Zach Powers is the rebellious son of Mel Powers. He's introduced in Season 3. He's gotten kicked out of school, gotten a girl pregnant, and vandalized the Powers Brothers factory just to piss off his dad. Zach eventually starts dating Carmen, which is done behind the back of the Lopezes. In the finale for Season 3, he and Carmen flee to San Francisco, before getting found by George and Vic in the premiere for Season 4. In the end, it turned out that Zach only wanted to date Carmen for sex. George Lopez 2. Where do I even start with this one? So in Season 2, when Angie and George need money to pay for Carmen's private school tuition, they go to a bank seeking a loan. The banker checks the Lopez's financial standing and finds that George had defaulted on several credit cards and had his car repossessed.
Okay, this is fine. Ooh.
What? What is it?
Well, in the last month, you've defaulted on 3 credit cards and you just had a car repossessed.
No, that has to be a mistake. That can't be us.
Actually, it's just the accounts in your husband's name.
Wait a second. These aren't my accounts.
Well, is that your date of birth and your social security number?
Yeah.
George, maybe somebody's stolen your identity.
Oh, come on. Who'd want to be me?
After Angie and George suspect that his identity was stolen, George 1 tracks down George Lopez 2 at a skate shop. After some lengthy conversations, they find out that George Lopez 2 is the son of Manny Lopez. Manny fathered George 2 after he left George and Benny. And the thing is, the reason why they have the same social security number is that Manny apparently used George 1's original birth certificate as George 2's birth certificate because he had George 1's original certificate. Complicated as fuck, I know. Shortly after, the two bond over some beers at Thirsties. George 2 tells George 1 that Manny was a shit father. Because of this, George 1 and George 2 start to bond. Shortly thereafter, George 2 asks George 1 for some financial support. Obviously, George 2 is not in the greatest financial standing given the repossessed car, the defaulted credit cards, etc. So George is about to agree to do it, but then George 2 eventually reveals that Manny actually was a great dad. He even gave George 2 a trust fund when he was in college, but after blowing through it, Manny cut him off.
Are you my half-brother? Do you even know who my dad is? Where'd you get the birth certificate?
What are you talking about?
You went to college, fool. Your student loan caught up with you. I can't believe a word you say, man. Who the hell are you?
I'm your half-brother, okay? I didn't tell you about college because I didn't think I'd get a whole lot of sympathy from you. I didn't think you'd help me out.
And what else did you lie about?
We weren't poor.
What?
We didn't really live in a Monte Carlo. We kind of summered in Monte Carlo. Our dad's rich, man.
Damn. But if you're rich, why do you need $500 from me?
No, Dad's rich, okay? He built this huge construction company. You know, I screwed up and he cut me off, man. I ran out of my trust fund money last year.
You're a spoiled rich kid?
And our dad's not such a horrible guy. He gave me a lot of chances. He's actually a pretty good dad.
George 2, however, did let George 1 know that his father lives in Phoenix, so that eventually helps him track him down. George Lopez 2 later appears again in season 3, the episode where George decides to give Manny one of his kidneys. But after that, he's never seen again. Claudia. So there are actually 2 different Claudias in the show, but the one that I'm referring to here is George's red-headed assistant that appears in season 1. She's pretty goofy and had a fun presence in the first season, but for whatever reason, she never came back afterwards. Honestly, I feel like it would have been pretty fun if the writers brought her back, but these things happen when a show is in its first season. Emelina Palmero. Emelina is Angie's mother. She's a dermatologist that's married to Vic Palmero, and actually just appears in one episode, season 2, episode 11. The same episode where Vic is introduced. Later on in the show, Emelina becomes pretty important to the story without actually appearing on screen again. In one of the show's later seasons, Vic finds out that she had cheated on him, and the two get divorced after 40 years of marriage. She and Angie were very close with one another. So this divorce took a huge toll on Angie. Not long after that, she suddenly dies, and Angie is devastated by that as well. Spuds. Spuds was a name George was called in school when he was a kid, usually by bullies. In one episode of the show, George runs into somebody he has not seen since grade school, and this person didn't realize who George was until he clarified that he was Spuds.
Hey, man, I'm George Lopez. You beat me up when I was 8.
I don't remember that.
No? Does this look familiar? Oh! Ah!
Oh, Spuds!
Oh! Yeah, Spuds! Maybe you don't recognize me because my head doesn't look like a potato anymore.
Ricky. Ricky is Max's mischievous friend that appears in seasons 2 through 4. He and Max get into a lot of tomfoolery together. They literally destroy the Lopez's garage with fireworks, and in another episode they drive a car into the Lopez's backyard. Ricky comes from a troubled home, with an absent father and an alcoholic mom. Later in the show, Ernie ends up taking in Ricky into his family's house, becoming his legal guardian.
Hey, what if he stays with me?
Oh, come on, Ernie.
No, he can stay with me and my folks.
You serious?
Yeah. You remember my mom and dad used to be foster parents? And I could get certified while Ricky's staying with us.
But dude, I mean, come on, taking on a kid, isn't that gonna cut into your social? Well, what about climbing up to corporate? What if you meet a girl who... You know what, you can take my kids too.
Hey, this is gonna work, George.
After Ernie takes in Ricky as a foster parent, he starts dating Ricky's mom, who is clearly just manipulating him for money and other things. After the episode where this happens, Ricky is never seen again. Similar to how the writers treated Mr. Needles, this feels like one of the many loose ends they left on the table. Like, I don't know, if you're gonna write off a character off a show like this, usually you wouldn't put them under the guardianship of one of the show's main characters. One of many decisions that the writers made that is truly a head-scratcher. The Lopez Way. Yet another one of George's recurring catchphrases. Whenever a challenge is presented in the Lopez family, George will usually tell Angie to handle it the Lopez way, which basically means ignoring it until it goes away. Or it can mean something like this.
You know, the Lopez's are proud people. And when there's principle at stake, we don't compromise no matter what. That's just the Lopez way.
They're fighting over $20.
We're petty too.
The show was progressive for its time. Now, in some ways, this isn't true, which I will touch on later. But at the end of the day, having a show like this about a Latino family on a major network was a pretty big deal at the time. As I talked about in the Sandra Bullock entry, the show faced many obstacles in the way of getting made in the first place. So the fact that it did get greenlit and went on for a pretty successful 6-season run was a big deal. It paved the way for more minority families to be portrayed on TV, which nowadays is pretty commonplace. Additionally, the show is also pretty progressive in the way that it depicted learning disabilities, specifically dyslexia. Sylvie Cardenas. Sylvie is Ernie's mom. Her defining character trait is that she is, well, extremely overweight. However, this character trait is actually a continuity error in the show, because in the season premiere of season 2, we actually get to see Ernie's mom on camera, and she's not overweight at all.
Hey, George.
Hey, Ernie.
What are you doing here?
Oh, my mom wanted to see the new buyer's warehouse.
Yeah, mine too. Are we pathetic or what?
Hey, George is only here to reach the high stuff. You're here because you still live with your mom, you freak.
Throughout the later seasons, there are many jokes and mentions of how Sylvie has been overweight basically for Ernie's entire life. Yet another plot hole thanks to the writers. But yeah, that's basically her entire character. Just a bunch of fat jokes. And now for the final entry of Layer 2, Salma Hayek. As anybody who's watched this entire show can probably tell you, Salma Hayek is George's celebrity crush. This actress never appears in the show, but she's mentioned in just about every single season, with George fantasizing about her in some way. And now, on to Layer 3. This is where things start to get pretty lengthy. George W. Bush. I'd say this depiction of Bush is pretty notable, because usually in sitcoms like this, if they have a famous celebrity as a character in the show, but they couldn't actually get that person to be on the show, they usually just don't show the character at all, or just show them from behind or a weird angle or something like that. But in season 3, you get to see that this is clearly not George W. Bush, and I just find that interesting. The casting director just said fuck it. Basically, the whole reason why quote-unquote Bush appears in the show in the first place is because he's speaking at the Powers Brothers factory, because he's campaigning for more defense spending, and as I said earlier, the Powers Brothers has lots of military contracts. Additionally, a lot of the employees at the Powers Brothers factory are Latino.
I'm meeting the president, Angie.
Oh my God. Why is he coming to Powers Aviation?
He's campaigning for more defense spending, and half the factory's Latino. We're desirable now.
So the B plot of this episode involves Carmen. She makes it clear that she does not like Bush, she's against war, and that she will protest against his speech at her dad's factory. And like, I didn't really notice how fucking funny this was as a kid, but now when I rewatch this show, the cookie cutter chant she cheers in the middle of the speech is like really funny.
No more war! No more war! Not in my name, Mr. President, not in my name! No more war! Shame on you, Mr. President! Shame, shame, shame! Shame on you! Shame, shame!
Well, that's the great thing about this nation. You don't have to agree with me. God bless the folks at Powers Aviation, and God bless America.
George Lopez gets mentioned in the speech, and then he steals it, which then leads to an investigation by the Secret Service. The plot for this episode was actually inspired by a true story from George Lopez, in which he apparently stole the president's speech in real life.
Hello, America, I'm George Lopez. The actual idea for the story, the show you just saw, me taking the president's speech, happened in real life. I was invited to perform at the White House, and President Bush, after he spoke, I looked down at the podium, and there was the speech with my name in it y todo. So I grabbed it, I put it in my pocket, and the Secret Service was looking for me. And I said, you know what, how do they know I took it? Then they came up to me and they said, Mr. Lopez? And I said, it's in the car!
Benny constantly hits on minors. There are so many instances of Benny explicitly hitting on minors, always played up for laughs. Notably, Carmen's boyfriends Jason and Zach.
Wow.
Mom!
If I was 35 years younger, he would have been your daddy, George.
Put that up in school.
You don't know what you're talking about. Mom, do you think a nun's gonna find this offensive?
I'm trying to work here.
I'll take one of those with Carmen cut out of it.
Hey, Carmen. I signed us up to do the kissing booth.
Are you sure you want to see me kissing a bunch of other guys?
No, you're taking the ticket, so I'm doing all the kissing.
Well, if it's a buck a kiss, what does a 20 get me?
Mom, you're not tall enough to ride that ride.
Dad, Grandma Benny just came out of the house in a bikini.
Damn it! Who told her there were high school boys here? Hey, cover yourself!
Gloria Palmero. Gloria is Angie's sister. She appears in Season 2, Episode 17. It's explained that she's had her fair share of fights with Angie, as Angie mentions that at one point, they were not on speaking terms. Some more important context in this episode. She recently separated from her cheating husband, and in this episode, caught up in emotion and jealousy, she kisses George. Max witnesses the kiss and confronts George about it, concerned that his parents are going to get divorced just like Gloria and her husband did. Gloria talks to Max about it, explaining that what she did was a mistake, and George and Max agree to wait to tell Angie until Gloria leaves. But, naively, Max tells Angie the second Gloria walks out the door.
Aunt Gloria kissed Dad!
That's how people say goodbye, Max.
No, in the garage, last night.
Oh.
What?
In her nightgown. The red one, not the black one. Dad said we should wait till she left to tell you.
Left the city, man, not the porch!
And then Angie and Gloria fight, once again starting up another rough patch in their relationship. Gloria is never seen in the show again, but she is mentioned in passing. The story for this episode was apparently inspired by an instance in George Lopez's real life. Bobblehead title card. Quite a few episodes in Season 2 opened with the title card with a bobblehead of George on it. This isn't especially interesting, but it's notable as it happens in episodes of Season 2 and then never again. George and Ernie's band. George and Ernie had a band in high school. In one episode it said that the band name was Sabotage, and in a later episode it is referred to as a different name. They had a song called Mexicat, and seemingly were a pretty big ripoff of Kiss. I feel like this entry isn't that significant in the grand scheme of things, but for some reason it's really burned into my memory from watching the show as a kid. The Worm. In 2 episodes, one from season 1 and one from season 6, the same thing happens. George and Ernie go to Thirsty's and drink away their frustrations. They get a bottle of mezcal to share, and in both episodes, George swallows the worm, resulting in a long hallucination in which George goes on a trip and sees how his life may have turned out different.
Well, we just want everything to be perfect for our special day. I mean, we're only getting married once, right, Pumpkin?
Hey, man, stop it!
Oh, somebody called Snow White because Grumpy's on my couch.
What's going on, man? What are you talking about getting married?
He's always a little loopy when he gets up from a nap. If you back out of our wedding now, I'm gonna keep the engagement ring you got me.
Engagement ring?
Don't be modest. It's beautiful. Mira.
The idea of the worm being a psychedelic is a myth, unfortunately. But it's used as the main plot device in both episodes. I personally loved this plot device. I think these 2 episodes were really funny, especially the one where George and Ernie are gay. Danny Boy / Drive-Thru Guy. These are 2 apparently different characters that are voiced by George Lopez himself in the show. I say apparently because neither one are seen on screen, for obvious reasons. Danny Boy is a guy that calls in sick multiple times in season 1.
Okay, Danny boy. I'll tell George you're not coming in. Goodbye.
Wait, don't be like that. You know you want me. Come on, let's go out. I'll bring you back. Danny boy, this is George. Why aren't you at work? I'm sick, man. I'm bedridden. Uh-huh. I got depression también. But I'm gonna get my life together. I'm gonna move out of my mom's house. I'm gonna go live with my aunt. You'll see. I'm gonna show everyone. I just need a truck. Danny boy, your medical leave ends Monday, and so does your job. If you're not here, bye.
And the drive-thru guy appears in that episode where George drives around Benny and her friends.
Sorry, what were you saying? How can I help you?
I would like a cheeseburger. Oh, sorry, I was ordering into the wrong big clown head.
We'll take 10 cheeseburgers. You like a french fry? Sorry? French fry. French fry. These aren't my friends, and not one of them is fine.
Women as a punchline / misogyny. So, remember in that entry where I said the show was progressive for its time, and that there were some exceptions to that? This is the biggest one. There are undertones of misogyny in the writing of the show. The most glaring example being the way George treats Carmen. Anyone who's watched the show can tell you that there are a million jokes from George and Angie about how they think that Carmen is the lesser of their 2 children. Additionally, George and Angie, but especially George, are obsessed with Carmen's virginity, which is a misogynist social construct in and of itself. In season 4, episode 1, right after Carmen comes home after running away to San Francisco with Zach Powers, one of the very first questions Angie asks her is, not if she's okay, but if she's still a virgin.
Sorry, Mom. Well, it's all over now. You're home, huh? And I am not gonna hammer you with questions. You want some tea, honey? Sugar? Cream? Are you a woman now, Cookie?
Because obviously, if your child runs away to a big city hours away from home for several days, as a parent, your biggest concern here should be the status of your child's virginity, not anything else. Carmen's family seem to think that she's not very bright, basically writing her off as a dumb teenage girl that is going to stay that way. Whenever Carmen might be struggling, George, Angie, and Benny usually make a joke about how she's going down the path of becoming a stripper or a sex worker one day. This is notable because whenever Max struggles in school, there are practically no jokes like this made by his parents. At least not to the level they're levied at Carmen. Honestly, the writers hate Carmen so much. It shouldn't be a surprise that I see so many people online hating on her character because, in a way, she was written to be hated. The more I think about this, the more it feels unsurprising that Marcela Lucia left the show after season 5. There are some more prominent examples of misogyny in the show, particularly dealing with George's relationship with Angie, but that will be addressed in its own entry later.
Angie, stop cradling that dog like he's a child. The doctor sees that he's gonna get us for as much money as he can.
But I do consider Mr. Needles one of our children.
That's just because Carmen set the bar so low.
Well, what's the matter?
I don't want to go. If I failed, I'm just gonna have to sit there like an idiot while everyone else is all happy signing their yearbooks.
Okay, well, you listen to me, Max. Okay, you could fail the 5th grade every year until we're old and senile, okay? Then you could dress us up in funny clothes and charge the neighborhood kids to ride us. And you will still be a better child than Carmen. Why don't you open something from Santa first?
That's not fair, Dad. He gets 2 gifts and I get 1.
Because he's a boy, quiet. You know, Carmen's gonna be driving next year. Pretty soon we'll be paying for smashed fenders and street signs, old people, coffee shops. Was I going the wrong way? Oh. I thought everyone was waving at me because I look so good.
Smells great.
I cook for my mom all the time.
Well, she's lucky to have you for a son. How come you don't cook anything for me, Max?
Because I don't have to work for your love. I mean, who's my competition? Carmen? I don't think so.
La Marie Cosmetics. Angie becomes a salesperson for La Marie Cosmetics after she and George decide to enroll Carmen in private school to help cover the costs of tuition. For a good while, this is Angie's job. Eventually, Angie loses thousands of dollars of La Marie products after Max and Ricky burned down the garage where the products were stored. In Season 4, Episode 4, La Marie officially goes out of business. Piper Mori. Piper was Carmen's friend in Season 2 that later turned against her. She's the one who wrote Carmen Lopez on the Lopez's window. Piper is a presumably rich honor student and class president, which later puts the school administration in favor of her as opposed to Carmen when they get into a rough fight. She is introduced in Season 2, Episode 2, and from the get-go she's a pretty obnoxious person, especially when she calls the Lopez family poor because Carmen doesn't have a cell phone. She and the other girls also harass Carmen's best friend, Toby, and make fun of her weight. Basically, a bully from the start. Adam Connors. Adam is Carmen's boyfriend that's introduced in Season 2. He's the boyfriend that I mentioned in the Carmen Struggles in School entry, who spreads rumors that she had sex with him at school that later causes her to get bullied. I put this entry right next to Piper's since they are directly related. After Carmen and Piper's rough fight at school, George eventually pressures Adam into confessing that Piper started the fight to the school counselor. Sonia Garcia. Sonia Garcia is George's high school crush that he mentions so often throughout the show. Sonia is never seen on screen, but both George and Ernie recall several instances of George trying to woo her in school.
Oh, this place brings back such great memories. Right there, that's where Sonia Garcia said she wouldn't go to the prom with me. And right there, oh, this is where Sonia Garcia said, "I'm serious, I won't go to the prom with you." And right here, oh, this is where Sonia Garcia's boyfriend beat me up.
AeroCorp. AeroCorp is a company that the Powers brothers work with in Season 2. As Jack and Mel prepare for a corporate meeting with AeroCorp, George expects to be a part of the meeting as well, but is pretty much tossed aside as he's told that the meeting is just for the big boys. After he sees how George was treated by his bosses, a higher up at AeroCorp offers George a lucrative job at the company. And since George is too proud to accept anything good that comes to him, he does turn it down. Coffee will look at you and say, "Damn." This is one of my personal favorite quotes in the show. George says it to Carmen.
Dad.
Carmen, you are so grounded, Coffee will look at you and say, "Damn."
Maciela Lucia isn't Latina. This is probably obvious to some, but the only person in the main cast that isn't Latino is Maciela Lucia. She's actually Albanian American. Damn illegal aliens. This might be my favorite quote in the entire show. In a season 6 episode where George has a vision of the future where aliens coexist with humans on Earth, there is this hilarious line.
All the unskilled labor's going to Martians. Damn illegal aliens.
The Commodores. The Commodores are a famous funk and soul group that formed in 1968. The group was signed to Motown, and their most famous member was Lionel Richie, who left the group in the 80s to pursue a solo career. What do the Commodores have to do with the George Lopez show, you might ask? Well, after Benny's extremely upset with Randy arranges a backyard performance from the group in the Lopez's backyard as a way to win her back. They perform the song Brick House. Great song. Randy says that he has this connection because he used to be a roadie for the band and that they owed him a favor.
Benita, I have no choice but to turn to a song they wrote that sums up exactly how I feel about you.
You really think you're gonna win me over with 3 times a lady?
I wasn't planning to.
Olivia. Olivia is the first friend Carmen makes after transferring to Allendale. She's played by Ashley Tisdale and appears in Season 2, Episode 21. Once Max sees her, he develops a crush on her, and later tries to peep on her while she's changing clothes in Carmen's room. George and Angie's song. So there are actually 2 different songs in the show that are referred to as George and Angie's song. The least notable one is mentioned in the episode where George and Angie dance at Frank's wedding. But the one notable one is the one used a bunch in the Season 6 episode where George and Angie are fighting. In the episode, George hears a song wherever he goes, and it pains him as it reminds him of Angie.
That tickles.
Benny likes to meet men in the Home Depot parking lot. It's mentioned a couple different times that Benny knows that the Home Depot parking lot is a great place to pick up guys.
I don't need a plumber anyway. I met a guy at Home Depot. He's coming over tomorrow.
Well, if he works there, he probably knows his stuff.
Oh, he doesn't work there. He was in the parking lot hanging around with a bunch of guys. They were passing around a beer, and when it got to me, I started talking to him.
Bulging eyes. Throughout Season 1, one thing that George did a lot on the show was bulging his eyes when you'd say certain things. This is something that he carried over from his stand-up routine. In an interview that's featured as a bonus feature on the DVD for Season 1 and 2, he admits that it does not play well on television, which is why he stopped doing it after Season 1. Sex bracelets. In one episode, Carmen and her friend start wearing these colorful bracelets that turn out to be signifiers of things you will do to a boy, with blue apparently meaning sex on the beach. After seeing these, Angie takes an interest in these bracelets, and not knowing what they mean, when she wears them, she gets hit on by a young grocery store worker.
No, Angie, don't end it. It's just one gray hair. We'll dye it.
What's going on?
I had an interesting little trip to the grocery store.
Another shopping story. Let me have those scissors.
When the teenage boy bagging my groceries noticed my bracelets, I took it as a compliment. When he helped me to the car, I thought that was really sweet. When he put his hand on my butt and told me that he'd never done purple with an older chick, I hit him. And when he stopped crying, we found his retainer. He told me that each of those colors stands for something different you'll do with a boy.
Just to cut them all off?
Tommy Durango. Tommy Durango is the school counselor George goes to after Carmen and Piper get into their big fight. Upon meeting, George realizes that he actually knows Tommy. He bullied him and Ernie in high school. He's played by Steve Schirripa, who is well known for his role in The Sopranos. When George and Vic get into a dick-swinging contest over who could spend the most money on a Christmas celebration, Vic shames George for not showing Max any Mexican Christmas culture. As a way to remedy this, Marisol lets him know about a play happening nearby. When they attend the play, they find out that the play is, funnily enough, pretty fucking dark, as it deals with Mexican gangs and drug dealers.
Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad.
Hey, that's my brother. You go, Beto!
Papi, can you get off work for Christmas tomorrow?
Oh, I don't know, mijo. I have to ask my boss, Senor Scrooge. Here he comes now. Feliz Navidad, Senor Scrooge.
Ah, humbug. Say that again and I'll pop a cap in your ass.
Keeping it real.
Well, I made a lot of coin for you today, Jefe. And being that it's Christmas tomorrow, I was hoping I could spend it with mi familia.
Are you out of your mind, Holmes? I'm a businessman. You think people stop getting high just because it's Christmas?
George. They're keeping it, real.
Just give me the money you make today and get back out on the street. And get down, it's a drive-by.
Help me, please! Tiny Tim and Tails be shot!
You could honestly make an entire iceberg chart on this episode alone. The Angie mural. When George and Angie went on their first date, which as I said before was basically just Angie fulfilling a bet, George made a huge leap of faith trying to impress her by showing Angie a mural he quote-unquote painted of her. This wins over Angie completely, and signifies the start of their romance. When the building where the mural is later torn down, it is revealed that George actually never painted the mural at all, he just added his signature to it. Although he says he did paint the butt crack. Angie is very upset by this, as she says this means that their whole relationship is based on lies. Which it is. George does not love Angie. But more on that later. Don't make me get the shovel. I was confused by this line as a kid because the way he said it made it sound like it was some sort of common phrase. Now, I'm sure in this context it means like that he would pick up Mr. Needles with a shovel to bring him closer to the food, but I could see this quote being confusing for some as well.
Don't make me get the shovel. Don't make me get the shovel. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Good boy. You just needed a little motivation. I learned that shovel thing from my mom.
Hosni. Hosni is an Arab employee at the factory that appears in Season 2, Episode 18. Once the Powers brothers are on the verge of getting a big government contract, Jack tells George to take him off the line as lead inspector, as Jack is concerned that it could cost him the government contract, quite literally racially profiling and discriminating against Hosni. It turns out that Hosni went to flight school, and considering the episode takes place in a post-9/11 America, that's why Jack views this as a red flag that could keep them from obtaining the government contract. George understandably feels bad and pretty conflicted about this the whole episode, and he feels like he shouldn't go through with it. Surely the show would have George stand up for Hosni and send home a message that discrimination in the workplace is wrong, right? Nope. The episode ends with George shifting Hosni's position on the line to a monotonous office job shuffling papers. So basically the show is saying that racism is okay if it means it might save some jobs. Got it. Like it is. In Season 2, Episode 11, at the end of the episode and at one other point, George says this to Carmen a few times.
Dad, how could you do that to me?
Because I thought it'd be funny like it is.
I just thought this was notable since it was said several times, and I feel like the writers wanted this to end up as a catchphrase, but it just never stuck. Pools at the factory. In several episodes of the show, whenever a factory worker at Powers Brothers might be having something good happening in their life, the other employees at Powers Brothers basically make a bet that it won't last.
Congratulations on losing the weight, Ernie. You know, there is a pool that says you won't be able to keep it off.
Are you in on it?
No, of course not. Your health is worth more to me than $50. Oh, look at this. Someone has picked the lock on the new vending machine. Why, a fella could eat anything he wants.
Look, your fiance just walked out on you. He's taking a couple of days off. Why don't you do the same?
I'm fine. I just want my damn candy bar. And I want everybody to stop talking about Randy.
Okay, listen up, people. Randy dumped Benny last night. Just 1 month before their wedding. Now, that's sad for Benny, but boy, it's great for me because that's the date I picked in the pool. That's right. Pay up, suckers.
Mel.
Oh, geez, Benny. I'm sorry. I didn't think you would be in today.
I don't believe this. You all had a pool that I wouldn't get married?
No, not at all. No, we had, Benny can't keep a man pool, see, so.
George had kidney disease in real life. The storyline in Season 3 where Manny has kidney disease is actually inspired by George Lopez's real life. George was diagnosed with kidney disease in 2004, and his wife at the time, Ann Lopez, donated one of her kidneys to George, effectively saving his life. The couple eventually divorced after 17 years of marriage.